Final game of the Rugby Championship 2025, folks. The Pumas are playing the BOKS from Twickenham. So technically a neutral one for this game, but it's been talked about a fair bit. There's a fair few South Africans, expat South Africans in that neck of the woods. So a little bit of a home away from home for the BOKS as they seek to get their hands on that Rugby Championship title, which they are very much in the driver's seat for. The Pumas will be looking to bounce back after a pretty severe disappointment last week, and they have rung the changes. They have brought some of the inexperienced guys into the squad. Remember, they can't win the competition. They're only on 9, which I say only. They're not that far behind, but they're just far enough behind the BOKS that they can't get to that 15-point total. The most they could get to, if they were to get a bonus point win, would be 14. So the Pumas are in a position where they can't win. They've got a bit of a free hand to make some changes, and they've done so. The BOKS kind of talking about this game like a final. And also with the trip to London, they're talking about the kind of lack of training time to be able to get kind of proper sessions into the guys. So they've kept things a lot more consistent as they seek to go back-to-back in this Rugby Championship. We will go through the squads which have been named, some of the predictions and the stats. You guys can let us know your thoughts. Obviously, Twickenham's an interesting venue. It's a chance for the Argentinian Rugby Union to make a bit of cash. Yeah, it probably doesn't give their chances in the game that much of a favour, like I said. But also, a lot of these guys play the rugby in Europe, the Pumas squad. So after this game, it'll be a short trip back to their clubs. I said they've made some changes. A couple of them are enforced. Gonzalo Garcia, they're 9, and Thomas Albornoz, they're 10 from last week, although Albornoz was on the bench last week, are both out injured. So they have had to make some changes. Less so in the forward pack, but they've still gone 6-2 split. Interestingly, they've gone 6-2 split in terms of extra loose forward, rather than like last week where it was extra lock. I do feel like that's a smart move because they've got better loose forwards than they do locks. I feel like they picked Paulos last week largely because he's large, but their loose forwards are generally more skilled and more able around the paddock than the extra lock. Vivas, Montoya and Sclavi, front row is unchanged. They need a front up. They were certainly second best last week. Get a bit closer at Twickenham, puts them in a better position. We'll see. Petty and Rubiolo were the 2 bench locks last week. This week they get a start, and then loose forwards of Matera, Crema and Grondona. Grondona is the only change. He's the kind of only inexperienced guy in the Pumas loose forward trio, with Crema being the tackling machine, and Matera, who kind of struggled to get any go forward last week, as did the Pumas pack generally. The only guy who did get any go forward on the ball carrier from the Pumas forwards was Oviedo, and he drops to the bench for this one. He's alongside Juan Montin Gonzalez. So as I said, 2 loose forwards on the bench. The 1 lock replacement is Molina. In terms of the backs, way less experience. Benitez Cruz is very early on in his Pumas career. He starts at 9. And Priscantelli will be getting his second cap for the Pumas, and I believe his first start. So, talk about a game where you can't win the championship. Chuck a guy in the deep end. That's Geronimo Priscantelli for this one. He's a talented player. He's a real live wire, but playing the Springboks when they are hunting down a rugby championship title in a neutral venue, it's not quite being chucked in the deep end in South Africa, but it's the next best thing, isn't it? So, pressure on that man. Chocobares is still there in the midfield, but he's alongside Picardo this week instead of Sinti, so it's another one of the youngsters who's been a recent addition to the Puma squad in 2025. And then Dalgi is back on the right wing replacing Iskro. He's got the fleet footwork if they can get him some ball. Likewise, Malia, interestingly, switches from fullback to left wing this week, and then Carreras Santiago is there at fullback. So there's no Mateo Carreras, who has been their main strike weapon winger. And they've played their regular fullback on the left wing. The fact that the Carreras is there at fullback means they've kind of got the extra playmaker. They're kind of playing 2 10s. So that does take a little bit of pressure off Priscantelli, who can also play fullback if they decide to kind of switch positions and whatnot mid-game. They've got the players who can kind of do that. But they need to get the backs the ball. They need to get the ball generally. They were living off scraps last week. The Pumas starting wingers got 17 meters combined last week, which was just very unusual because the Pumas have been getting those guys into lots of space all season. Bench-wise, Ruiz, Wegner, and Marchetti. That's the same front row replacements. I mentioned the other forward replacements. There's 2 backs. Mojano comes in as the replacement halfback. He has also been in the mix a little bit recently. And then Iskro, like I said, drops to the bench. They really just need some ball. For the BOKS, I mentioned they've kept things pretty consistent. Rassi mentioned they've only had chance to get 2 training sessions into the players, so they didn't really want to change things too much. Some of the media were reading into the lack of changes, meaning like, this is your best team, Rassi, is that right? And he said no. He's never going to say which is his best team, is he? But he has certainly kept it consistent. Ox, who was a late scratching last week, is back in, so good news for the BOKS. Maybe less good news for the Pumas, because that guy is a bit of a weapon at scrum time. Malcolm Marks and Thomas Dutoy continue on. Thomas Dutoy was one of several guys alongside Colby and Willemse who was kind of flagged as potentially having a wee niggling injury, but he's come through to be named. Eben Etzebeth and Ruan Nokia, so barring Ox, it is the same type 5, it's the same forward back. Yeah, so they've really kept things consistent, and with the way the BOKS were able to get on top up front, which lays the platform for guys like Sasha to do their thing, you know, why would you change it, especially if you are treating this game like a final? Like I said before, the BOKS could go into this one having pretty much, I think, already won it, depending on how the other result goes. They could literally have already won and just have to go through the motions, but going through the motions is not a thing that Rassi will get the boys to do, so yeah, he's treating it like a final. Kolisi is still there as captain, Peter Steff is still there, and Jasper Visser is still there. Those guys got amazing go forward last week. Like, Kolisi had the least of the carries in terms of the meters with 23. Which would have still put him only behind Oviedo for the Pumas side. Like, he would have been the second best loose forward ball carrier for the Pumas, but he's the third best for the BOKS because Visa had 49 and Peter Steff had 66 plus 2 tries. So they were all getting go forward ball. The BOKS loosies, which is, as I said, part of what helps the backs out. Reinach and Sasha continue on at 9-10. So, like, Sasha's not that experienced himself, but he's up against a one-cap guy. And he doesn't play like a guy who's only got, you know, less than 20 caps, does Sasha. He certainly stole the show last week. I mean, the dude had more points than the Pumas put together. The guy had more clean breaks than the Pumas put together. He was just on fire. Expectations are through the roof for him for this one. So we'll see. We'll see how that pressure gets to him, if at all. He seems like a guy who kind of eats pressure for breakfast, but we'll see. Dearlander and Moody continue on their midfield combo at 12 and 13. Hooker and Colby likewise on the wings. And then Willemse there at fullback. So it is so consistent. Ox is the change in the forward pack. Yeah. There's a few changes on the bench, though. Bongi is in. Haven't seen Bongi for a wee while. He's been dealing with a family illness, so good to see him back with the BOKS. Vessels and Lowe are the 2 prop replacements, so no changes there. Sneyman and Smith continue on. It's interesting that Rassi really seems to have kind of gone full circle in terms of starting as a 5-3 split coach, 6-2, 7-1s, and now he's back to a pretty consistent 5-3 split, and he's getting great value from it, and he's not even got Esterhazen in the squad this week, who he has talked about as that kind of potential extra flanker. He's got Jesse Creel in the 23 jumper. Marnie Libok is there in the 22 jumper. And then Grant Williams is back ahead of Vandenberg as the replacement halfback. So, yeah, it's very consistent from the BOKS. And, yeah, I think everything points to the fact that the job is not done. And they want to continue the performance levels from last week. Like, the BOKS have shown it in patches that when they're on fire, nobody can live with them. But I guess Rassi will want more than a patch. He'll want, you're never going to get a full 80-minute performance, but he'll want as close to that as possible against a relatively inexperienced Pumas team in the scheme of things. I mean, I say that there's a few 100-cap guys, close to 100-cap guys in this Puma squad as well, but there's certainly a few guys at the other end. Argentina, stats. Last week, missed 34 tackles. It's the most they've missed all rugby championship. They had 40% possession. That's the least they've had all rugby championship. Their line-out was at 67%. That's the lowest they've had this rugby championship. So they are usually a lot better in every area around the pitch. Part of that is the BOKS don't let them play, but part of that is themselves, man. The BOKS weren't making these guys miss tackles. I guess they are in a way, if a guy busts your tackle. But the Pumas themselves said they've done a fair bit of kind of criticism or self-criticism, self-reflection. They all need to be better. Clearly there are areas that they need to be better. And if they get even half of those areas right, they won't get almost 70 points put on them. Surely. They usually win more turnovers. Like, there were a lot of areas they are usually a lot better. I mentioned the wingers not getting the ball. Like, they don't need to improve that many areas to be a lot better than they were last week. But it kind of partly depends on the BOKS, doesn't it? Like, it's the second game in a row where the BOKS, for their stats, had 11 clean breaks in one game. Like, for context, nobody else has had 11 clean breaks in a game of this Rugby Championship. The All Blacks have had 9, and the Wallabies have had 10, but nobody's got to 11, and the BOKS have done it twice in a row. That's pretty ominous. 40 kicks from hand is the most that they've kicked this Rugby Championship, the BOKS. And when you think kicks from hand, it's easy to just think hoofing the ball long, but how many of those kicks are like Sasha's cross kicks to Colby, Mani Libok with a little dink over the top? There's a lot of creative kicking in the back line as well, so the whole idea that kicking equals boring doesn't make sense when you watch this BOKS team do their kicks. It's not just box kicks, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, a lot of areas they excelled. Obviously, Sasha stole the show, but it was more than that. As I said, it was the loose forwards getting over the gain line. It was the scrum. It was a lot of areas for the Springboks. It was 67-30 last week, and you feel like, one of those tries is a bit of a gift, and they kind of freak one from Colby. So the BOKS were probably even better value than that last week. You would hope for a contest that's going to be a bit closer this week, but the predictions are still kind of 2 tries-ish. Bookies are saying the BOKS by 13, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm saying the BOKS by 12. It is on at Twickenham, so it's neutral, but as I said, there'll be a fair few... there'll be some fans from both sides there, some neutrals, but you feel like the South African fans will be the ones making the majority of the noise. Andrea Piatti gets his second game of the Rugby Championship after a much criticised performance last week at Eden Park. And I said it before when he got the Lions to a job, that he does seem to be something of a fast-tracked referee. Some referees seem to get kind of special treatment in terms of they get more games or they get big games. If I am not mistaken, Andrea Piatti is the only ref this Rugby Championship to get 2 games. Everyone else has just had the 1. There may be a reason for that I have missed, but as far as I'm aware, he's just the only ref to get 2. So it does feel like fast track. Like when he got the Lions tour gig, I was a little bit surprised. Like, wow, you're giving him such a big game. But yeah, 2 games for Andrea. Fingers crossed he's not the talking point at the end of this one. But you guys let us know your thoughts. Do you see the BOKS putting on another massive point total against a somewhat experimental Pumas squad? Certainly experimental 9-10 combo. Or do you think the Pumas can't be as bad as they were in so many areas like they were in Durban last week? What's the Twickenham factor going to be like? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We are cracking close to 100k. It'd be nice to get there maybe before the end of the year, but we will see. You guys take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See ya.